Her chilling prediction reads, "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. Someone, the name blacked out, is planning an accident."
Prince William held a rusted iron crowbar against the lock of an unmarked strongbox, hidden deep in the lower crypt of St. James's Palace. With a sharp groan of metal, the lid flew open, revealing a stack of highly classified documents stamped 1996. Tucked inside the yellowed files was a personal diary written in Princess Diana's unmistakable handwriting. William pulled out the first page, read the top line, and immediately ordered his security detail to lock down the vault. A 30-year-old palace cover-up had just collapsed.
This is from Diana, in her own words, 10 months before she died.
The dust of the lower crypt. A structural engineer's drill ground loudly into the damp brickwork of the basement corridor beneath St. James's Palace on a cold Thursday morning in early May 26. The engineering team was performing a routine survey of the palace foundations, checking for water damage after a month of heavy London rain. Prince William stood 3 feet back, a high-intensity work lamp in his hand, watching the dust settle onto the stone floor. The drill bit suddenly slipped forward, hitting an unexpected hollow space behind a section of 18th century masonry. The chief engineer stopped the machine, pulled a loose brick away from the wall, and pointed his flashlight into a narrow, stone-lined structural alcove. Resting inside the dark recess was an old, heavy iron strongbox. It was covered in a thick layer of gray powder and webbed with decades of grime. The box had no official asset registry tag, no barcode, and no inventory number from the Royal Collections Department. William took a step closer, holding his lamp over the rusted padlock, securing the heavy latch. He reached down, gripped the handle of a steel pry bar from the engineer's tool trolley, and wedged it beneath the lock. He threw his weight against the iron bar until the ancient padlock snapped apart with a loud, metallic crack that echoed down the concrete corridor. The concrete history of the St. James's Palace vaults is tightly guarded by the Lord Chamberlain's office. The building serves as the formal senior palace of the sovereign, holding centuries of diplomatic records, private family ledgers, and obsolete state papers. When Princess Diana passed away in August '97, her private office apartments at Kensington Palace were thoroughly cleared out by a specialized team of palace archivists. The public was told that every single personal document, diary, and letter had been carefully indexed and transferred to the secure royal archives at Windsor Castle. The discovery of this unindexed iron box beneath St. James's Palace completely contradicted that official narrative. William lifted the heavy iron lid, wiping a smudge of grease away from the brass hinges. Inside the box sat 4 thick leather-bound folders, their spines marked with the official year stamp of 1996. Tucked between the folders was a stack of loose vellum pages tied together with a frayed piece of blue silk ribbon. The very top sheet bore a small, white adhesive label that had yellowed around the edges over the last 30 years. William held his work lamp directly over the text, squinting at the sharp, sweeping handwriting covering the front of the paper. The text on the label was not a standard archiving index or a list of contents. It was a direct, handwritten warning written by Princess Diana herself during the final months of her formal separation from the royal family. The 7 words she had written across the paper were clear and undeniable. They read, "The men in gray suits hid this." William picked up the top folder, feeling the dry, brittle leather crack slightly under his fingers. He opened the first page and read the initial 3 lines of text, his jaw tightening as he recognized the official letterhead of the 1996 Royal Commission on Constitutional Reform. The immediate reaction from the palace security team was sharp and defensive. The head of William's personal protection detail walked into the alcove, looked at the dated folders, and immediately used his radio to call the main gatehouse. He ordered his men to close the entry gates to the lower courtyard and suspend all routine visitor passes for the next 4 hours. He knew that if a senior archivist from Buckingham Palace caught wind of the discovery, the central household would immediately attempt to seize the box under the terms of the Public Records Act, burying the papers back inside the restricted vaults of Windsor Castle before William could review them. The underlying facts of the 1996 Constitutional Review were heavily suppressed by the government at the time. Following the formal finalization of the royal divorce, a secret committee of civil servants and senior courtiers met behind closed doors to draft a new set of rules governing the future public roles of non-royal parents of future kings. The official line was that the committee had dissolved without producing a final report. These discovered folders proved that the committee had not only finished their work, but they had also drawn up a highly controversial administrative framework that directly targeted Diana's financial autonomy and her access to her children. The tension within the basement corridor grew heavier as William's security team began setting up a portable digital scanner on a folding table next to the brick wall. They were operating under a strict timeline. William did not trust the Central Palace administration to handle the files fairly. He wanted a complete, encrypted digital copy of every single page uploaded to his private Kensington Palace server before the Lord Chamberlain's office could launch a formal legal claim to the physical box. The mystery of why this specific strongbox had been left in a basement alcove beneath St. James's Palace remained a massive question mark for William's staff. The building's lower crypts had undergone multiple renovations since 1997, yet this hidden space had somehow been completely missed by every single facility audit. The staff began to realize that the box had not been forgotten by accident. It had been placed there intentionally by a high-ranking mole within the archiving department who wanted to ensure the files survived the systematic purge of Diana's private papers after her death. As the portable scanner began to hum, processing the first batch of vellum pages, a junior security officer walked down the corridor, carrying an urgent message on a digital tablet. The palace gate logs showed that a private vehicle belonging to Queen Camilla's chief of staff had just pulled into the upper courtyard above them. The visitor had not gone through the standard scheduling channel, and his arrival had not been logged on the master daily diary. The central household had discovered that something was happening in the lower crypt, and William needed to decide how he would hold the line before the elevator doors opened. The 7 words on the label. Prince William held the blue ribbon stack of vellum under the bright glare of the halogen work lamp. He peeled back the protective wax paper covering the first handwritten ledger. The 7 words on the adhesive label stared back at him in his mother's direct, ink-heavy cursive. The men in gray suits hid this. Beneath that label lay an unlisted diary entry dated December 5th, 1996. It was written on the night the government finalized the removal of Princess Diana's royal protection details. William traced his thumb over the indentations left by her fountain pen. The first page contained a detailed list of names. It did not feature politicians or public figures. It listed 6 senior palace courtiers who managed the daily administration of the central household in the mid-90s. Diana had documented every single meeting these men held regarding her personal post-divorce budget. She recorded the exact dates, times, and locations of their private briefings. According to her notes, these administrators spent months planning a systematic reduction of her public resources. They wanted to minimize her global media presence by restricting her access to state transport. The concrete facts of the 1996 transition matched her records perfectly. Following the formal decree absolute, the Lord Chamberlain's office stripped Diana of her Royal Highness status. They cut her staff from 26 down to just 4 personal aides. The official press release at the time framed this as a mutual agreement to give the princess more privacy. Diana's hidden ledger proved that it was an aggressive administrative squeeze. The courtiers had drawn up a secret penalty system to punish her if she upstaged the core royal family members in the newspapers. The tension in the damp crypt rose when William turned to the second page of the diary. Diana had clipped a confidential memo to the vellum. The memo bore the official watermark of the Royal and VIP Protection Command from November 1996. It outlined a plan to quietly monitor her international travel schedules. The document authorized staff to share her flight manifest details with specific tabloid editors before she left the country. It was a deliberate strategy to create a media circus around her private trips, making her look chaotic to the British public. William read the names of the courtiers who had signed off on that surveillance memo. 2 of those individuals were still employed by the central royal household in 2026. They held senior advisory roles within Queen Camilla's current administrative board. These men had spent the last 3 decades presenting themselves as loyal servants of the institution. In reality, They were the architects of the campaign to isolate William's mother during her final years of exile. This discovery changed everything for the future king's current strategy. William was already locked in a quiet dispute with Camilla's office over the management of the royal households. Camilla's team wanted to centralize the administrative staff, giving her advisors direct control over Kensington Palace's appointments. William now held a document that proved exactly what happened when the central household gained unchecked power over an independent family member. He could use this historical file to block her consolidation plans permanently. The mystery of how Diana obtained these internal security memos remained unsolved. The documents were classified under the Official Secrets Act and should have been locked inside government safes in Whitehall. Diana's notes revealed that a junior transport clerk had smuggled the files out of the palace in a laundry basket. This clerk had witnessed the administrative plotting and chose to risk his career to give the princess a legal shield. He handed the papers to her just days before she packed her bags for her final trip to France. Outside the alcove, the sound of heavy footsteps on the concrete stairs signaled the arrival of the visitor from upstairs. Queen Camilla's chief of staff walked into the lower crypt, flanked by a senior palace archivist. The archivist carried a formal reclamation order signed by the Lord Chamberlain. He stepped toward the steel table and stated that any unindexed historical documents found on the property must be surrendered to the Windsor archives immediately. He cited the royal prerogative laws regarding sovereign paperwork. William did not hand over the files. He slipped the blue ribbon stack into his personal leather briefcase and closed the brass latches with a loud click. He looked at the archivist and told him that these papers fell under the private probate jurisdiction of the Spencer family trustees. He stated that any attempt to confiscate the briefcase would result in an immediate legal filing at the High Court. The Chief of Staff realized that William was not going to negotiate. He gestured for the archivist to step back, knowing that a public scene in the basement would create an immediate national scandal. The confrontation ended in a tense standoff, but the real battle was just beginning. William ordered his personal protection detail to escort the briefcase directly to his vehicle. He knew that the central household would try to launch a countermove through the government's legal channels before the day was over. The mystery of the 3 remaining leather-bound folders inside the iron box was still playing on his mind. He needed a secure location, away from the palace cameras, to unpack the rest of his mother's ultimate legacy. He told his driver to clear a route directly to the secure archive room at St. James's Palace, preparing to lock the doors for a full investigation. 4 hours of silence. The heavy iron bolts of the main archive room at St. James's Palace slid home at exactly 1 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. Prince William stood by the high security console, watching the digital status lights turn from green to solid red. His personal security team had taken up positions outside the only 2 entry points to the lower basement suite. No one was allowed in or out. William unzipped his leather briefcase, pulled out the digital encryption keys, and connected them to the independent terminal on the central scanning desk. The security log for the palace archive room recorded an unprecedented 4 hours of total operational radio silence. Under standard operating protocols, the St. James's Archive must maintain an open digital link with the master registry team at Windsor Castle at all times. William's chief of staff personally pulled the main network cables from the wall socket, severing that connection completely. He knew that the central administration at Buckingham Palace was already trying to use remote override codes to lock the terminal screens. By isolating the system, he ensured that the data transfer could proceed without external interference. The concrete facts of the palace security system are highly technical but strictly monitored. The Royal and VIP Protection Command uses an automated alerting software called Sentinel to track the movement of sensitive historical folders across all London residences. The moment William moved the iron box from the lower crypt to the secure archive room, an automated digital flag was sent to the central control desk at Clarence House. A senior archivist close to Queen Camilla immediately attempted to use his high-level administrative clearance to enter the archive room's secondary vestibule. The tension peaked when the security cameras showed this senior archivist arguing with William's personal protection officers in the corridor. The archivist held up a printed warrant from the Lord Chamberlain, demanding immediate physical access to the room to perform an emergency safety audit. William's officers did not budge. They informed him that under the direct orders of the Prince of Wales, the entire lower basement level was operating under a Tier 1 tactical lockdown. The archivist spent 15 minutes trying to bypass the officers before realizing that the physical perimeter was completely impassable. Inside the locked room, the portable scanner continued its steady, methodical hum. Page after page of the 1996 files appeared on William's encrypted monitor screen. The second leather-bound folder contained an unlisted set of financial transactions between the central household and an independent public relations firm in New York. The dates of these transactions matched the exact weeks leading up to Princess Diana's landmark television interview in late 1995. The record showed that palace funds had been used to hire private investigators to monitor the movement of Diana's international legal advisors. This specific financial discovery added massive weight to William's legal position. For nearly 30 years, the official palace line was that the central household had never engaged in domestic surveillance against members of its own family. These documents completely dismantled that defense. The invoices were signed by a former financial comptroller of the Privy Purse, proving that the funding had been authorized at the highest levels of the institution. William now possessed the exact physical proof needed to show that the administrative machinery had been weaponized against his mother. The mystery of why this specific senior archivist had tried so desperately to breach the lockdown became clear as the scanning process neared completion. The digital logs revealed that the archivist's personal staff login had been used multiple times over the previous 48 hours to search the digital master registry for references to St. James's Palace brickwork repairs. He had been actively looking for the location of the hidden alcove, trying to find the iron box before William's engineering team discovered it during their structural survey. William watched the final progress bar hit 100% on his laptop screen, confirming that a complete, encrypted copy of all 4 folders was now securely stored on his private Kensington Palace server. He disconnected the digital keys, placed the original vellum pages back into his briefcase, and nodded to his chief of staff. The 4 hours of absolute silence had served their purpose perfectly. The central household had been completely outmaneuvered logistically, and the data was now completely safe from institutional seizure. The lockdown was officially lifted at 5 o'clock, and the heavy iron bolts slid back open. The senior archivist was no longer waiting in the corridor, having been summoned back to Clarence House for an emergency briefing with Camilla's legal team. But as William walked out into the upper courtyard, his private secretary handed him a fresh communication log from the High Court. A senior judge had just issued an urgent confidential request for William to attend a private meeting at the Royal Courts of Justice the following morning. The central household had abandoned their attempts to seize the box physically and was now launching a high-stakes legal challenge to block William from using the documents in his current dispute over the royal household budgets. The paper trail of the long exile. William sat at a wide pine table in his private library at Anmer Hall on Friday evening. He spread 6 distinct sets of correspondence across the green felt protective mat. A high-intensity reading light illuminated the faded blue ink headers from 1996. Next to his laptop sat a glass paperweight, holding down a copy of a confidential civil service audit from 30 years ago. William picked up a red pencil and marked a series of dates linking palace security logs with international bank transfers. The files in the third folder outlined the exact mechanisms of Princess Diana's final years outside the core family structure. It contained letters between her personal legal representative and the high-ranking treasury officials who managed the civil list expenditures. One specific letter, dated October 14, 1996, showed that the Palace Administrative Board had attempted to block Diana from accepting international humanitarian roles. They claimed that her non-royal status meant her travel would complicate state diplomacy. The concrete facts of that winter season were clear in the official public record. Diana spent the final months of her life focusing on global landmine clearance campaigns, working directly with international charities. The public saw a pioneering philanthropist operating independently on the world stage. These discovered files revealed a completely different administrative reality. The central household had drafted a secret legal framework to strip her of her travel insurance exemptions if she did not clear her guest lists with the Lord Chamberlain's office first. The tension in the library grew when William compared the signatures on the Treasury letters. 3 of the senior civil servants who had signed off on the travel restrictions had also authorized a private budget allocation for an unlisted surveillance firm in Geneva. Diana had discovered this connection through an anonymous leak from a junior clerk inside the Lord Chancellor's department. She kept the complete paper trail, including the original envelopes and postmarks, to serve as her ultimate legal defense if the palace ever tried to take full custody of her sons. William read through the financial appendix at the back of the folder. The documents showed that the Geneva surveillance firm had been paid through an offshore shell company managed by an investment bank in the Channel Islands. The tracking codes on the invoices matched the private account numbers of the senior courtiers who oversaw the reorganization of the royal security pools in the late 90s. These same account numbers appeared in recent 2026 audit files regarding Queen Camilla's current household expenditure reviews. This historical data provided William with a massive tactical advantage in his ongoing administrative standoff with Clarence House. Camilla's team was currently pushing for a complete overhaul of the security budgets for the minor royals, aiming to redirect those funds toward her own inner circle. William now held the exact blueprint showing how those same financial mechanisms had been used to isolate his mother decades earlier. He could present these files to the Prime Minister's Oversight Committee, proving that centralized control over the security pools invited severe institutional abuse. The mystery of how these files ended up in an unindexed iron box became clearer as William reached the bottom of the stack. A handwritten letter from a retired palace security chief was pinned to the final folder. The letter, addressed directly to Diana, confirmed that he had intentionally removed these records from the main Buckingham Palace registry on the night of her death. He knew that an official order had been issued to shred all files related to the Geneva surveillance contracts. He chose to hide them in the St. James's crypt to ensure that the historical truth survived the purge. Outside the house, the sound of car tires on the gravel driveway broke the silence of the Norfolk countryside. A courier vehicle from the Ministry of Justice stopped outside the main entrance. The driver delivered a sealed, red-stamped package addressed directly to the Prince of Wales. Inside was an official letter from the Attorney General requesting an immediate, off-the-record briefing regarding the St. James's Palace discovery. The government had realized that William held documents that could expose decades of illegal domestic surveillance by former palace officials. The mystery deepened when William's chief of staff reviewed the digital metadata on the Attorney General's request. The tracking log showed that the letter had been drafted after a private, unlisted meeting between the Prime Minister and Queen Camilla's lead legal counsel. The central household was trying to use state channels to force William into a confidentiality agreement before the documents could be entered into the High Court record. They wanted to bury the paper trail forever, under the guise of national security. William did not reply to the Attorney General's letter. He instructed his security team to pack the entire paper trail back into his secure briefcase. He knew that the next 24 hours would decide the future structure of his court. He had the physical evidence, the confirmed facts, and the exact names of the administrators who had managed his mother's long exile. He needed to use this leverage to initiate a complete cleanup of the current palace administration, starting with a direct confrontation with the old guard who still held offices inside Buckingham Palace. The purge of the old guard. The clock in the central courtyard of Buckingham Palace struck 11 on Monday morning as Prince William walked through the private ground floor entrance of the administrative wing. He carried his secure leather briefcase, bypassing the reception desks and heading straight for the boardroom of the Royal Household Compensation and Governance Committee. Sitting around the long walnut table were the 4 senior directors of the Palace Administrative Board, alongside Queen Camilla's personal legal advisor. The room was brightly lit, but the atmosphere turned instantly cold as William took a seat at the head of the table without a single casual greeting. William unclasped the brass latches of his briefcase and pulled out a slim, red-tabbed dossier compiled from the discovered St. James's Palace files. He laid it flat on the center of the table. This document was the direct financial analysis Princess Diana had put together in the spring of 1996, detailing the private investment portfolios of the senior courtiers who had managed her logistical exile. William opened the first page, which displayed a list of offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, all tied to the private pension funds of 2 specific board members currently sitting across from him. The concrete facts of the palace administrative structure are deeply rooted in the Sovereign Grant Act. the senior directors of the household board, hold massive executive power over how state funds are allocated for royal security, staff salaries, and the daily maintenance of the various royal residences. They operate with a high degree of autonomy, answerable only to the Lord Chamberlain and the sovereign. However, Diana's hidden dossier proved that in 1996, these specific directors had used their positions to steer lucrative palace public relations contracts toward independent firms in which they held secret, undeclared financial shares. The tension in the boardroom peaked when William slid a copy of a 2026 bank audit next to the 1996 files. The modern audit showed that these same offshore accounts had received a series of unexplained transfers during the first week of April 2026. The dates matched the exact days Queen Camilla's office had introduced her new centralized household budget proposal. William looked directly at the two senior directors and stated that their secret financial cooperation with the central household's consolidation plan violated the strict anti-corruption clauses of the Civil Service Charter. The directors looked at Camilla's legal advisor, expecting a strong defense based on the royal prerogative or state immunity laws. The advisor remained completely silent. He had already spent the morning reviewing the forensic reports on the St. James's Palace discovery, and he knew that the documents William held were legally unassailable. If these files were handed over to the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament, it would trigger a massive public financial investigation that would completely destroy the credibility of the current administration and implicate Camilla's office in a major domestic spending scandal. William did not offer the board members a chance to negotiate a compromise or draft an internal explanation. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out two pre-written letters of immediate resignation, and slid them across the table toward the two compromised directors. He gave them a simple, non-negotiable timeline. They had exactly 60 minutes to sign the letters, clear out their private offices, and surrender their security passes to the gatehouse detail. If the papers were not signed by noon, William's legal team would deliver the complete financial dossier to the Metropolitan Police Fraud Squad. The two senior directors realized their leverage had entirely evaporated. They took their pens, signed the resignation letters without saying a word, and stood up from the table. They exited the boardroom through the rear staff doors, leaving their leather portfolios behind. This immediate quiet purge of the old guard was a devastating blow to the central household's operational machinery. Camilla's team had spent months positioning these specific allies within the governance committee to ensure her budget reforms passed without resistance. In less than an hour, William had completely dismantled her bureaucratic power base. To ensure the vacancy was handled immediately, William beckoned his personal human resources administrator into the room. The administrator carried a secondary black ledger containing a pre-vetted list of replacement candidates recruited directly from the independent corporate governance sector in London. William informed the remaining board members that the era of appointing internal palace insiders to oversee public state funding was officially over. He signed an interim executive decree appointing a former forensic accountant from the Bank of England to head the audit department, effective at 1 o'clock that afternoon. This move locked the central household out of the data collection loops completely, ensuring that any future financial maneuvers by Camilla's team would be caught by an outside investigator before they could ever reach the implementation stage. The legal advisor for Clarence House took careful notes as William outlined the new reporting structure for the remaining administrative staff. Documents regarding security personnel rotations and household travel pools would now skip the central Lord Chamberlain's sorting office entirely. The files were to be routed through a secure, encrypted cloud server managed by an independent data security firm based in Edinburgh. This procedural wall meant that Camilla's private secretary could no longer log into the shared internal registry to flag or delay Kensington Palace's long-term international schedules. The bureaucratic framework that had allowed the central household to monitor and squeeze independent family members since 1996 was systematically dismantled in a single morning session. This sudden administrative cleanup sent an immediate shockwave through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. By 12:30, news of the sudden departures had leaked to the senior household staff, causing a wave of panic among the courtiers who had spent weeks trying to position themselves close to the Queen's inner circle. They realized that William was no longer just protecting his private estate. He was actively purging the institution of the individuals who had weaponized its machinery against his mother, using her own hidden evidence to finish a battle that began 30 years ago. The mystery then turned to the final, heaviest leather-bound folder remaining inside William's briefcase. Camilla's legal advisor noticed that while William had used the second and third folders to execute the financial purge, he had left the first folder completely closed on the table. This remaining file bore a distinct, purple constitutional seal from the Privy Council office, dated July 1996. The advisor wondered what explosive material was hidden inside that specific folder, and why William was holding it back for a separate, much larger confrontation. As the meeting adjourned, William's private secretary received a high-priority communication flag from the Sandringham security pool. King Charles's private secretary had just authorized an immediate, unlisted helicopter transport to bring the Prince of Wales to Windsor Castle for a face-to-face meeting with the King and Queen Camilla at 4 o'clock. The central household had realized that their administrative defenses had completely collapsed, and they were forcing a final emergency family summit to contain the damage before the constitutional bombshell could be dropped. The ultimate legacy of the princess. The heavy oak doors of the Oak Room at Windsor Castle clicked shut at exactly 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon. King Charles sat in a cushioned armchair by the bay window, a silver cane resting against his knee. Queen Camilla stood by the drinks cabinet, her hands clasped tightly around a small crystal glass. Prince William walked to the center of the room, unlatched his leather briefcase, and pulled out the final, heaviest folder from the St. James's Palace strongbox. The folder bore the faded purple wax seal of the Privy Council from July 1996. William did not offer a formal greeting or a summary of the morning's boardroom purge in London. He laid the document flat on the table, directly in front of his father. This file was the unsigned abdication framework drafted by a secret constitutional committee during the peak of the 1996 royal divorce crisis. Tucked inside the official legal text was a 3-page personal addendum written and initialed by Princess Diana. The top page contained a specific binding clause regarding the governance of the royal court during any future periods of sovereign illness or transition. The concrete facts of British constitutional law dictate that the Regency Act of 1937 governs how royal power is distributed if a monarch is temporarily unable to fulfill their duties. Under those old rules, the sovereign spouse automatically takes a prominent seat on the Council of State, giving them significant administrative control over the signing of official state documents and the management of the royal diary. However, Diana's discovered 1996 addendum revealed a hidden, parallel legal precedent. The secret committee had established that if the heir to the throne reached the age of majority, any long-term administrative consolidation by a non-lineal consort could be frozen by a direct veto from the Prince of Wales. The tension in the room turned absolute as King Charles adjusted his reading glasses and scanned the final paragraphs of his late wife's addendum. The text showed that Diana had successfully lobbied 2 senior members of the Privy Council to insert this specific veto clause to protect her eldest son's future sovereignty. She knew that if Charles eventually remarried, a powerful consort could attempt to use a future health crisis to rewrite the internal administrative hierarchy of the family. The presence of the official Privy Council seal meant that the document was not a mere opinion. It was a pre-verified constitutional framework that had been formally logged by the government's legal advisors. William looked directly at his stepmother and stated that the legal definition of non-interference was now fully codified. He explained that his legal team had already delivered a certified digital copy of the 1996 framework to the Lord Chancellor's office in Whitehall. This move effectively stripped Camilla's private office of its power over the upcoming autumn schedule, placing the ultimate control of the royal diary exclusively in the hands of a joint council, managed by William and Princess Anne. If Camilla's team attempted to override this new arrangement, William would immediately authorize his solicitors to present the unsigned abdication files to the public repository, exposing the hidden history of the 1996 crisis to the global media. Camilla turned to her husband, expecting an immediate constitutional defense from the king's private legal advisors. King Charles simply shook his head and closed the folder. He looked up at William and stated that the terms of the 1996 addendum would be respected to the letter. The king understood that, with the morning purge of the old guard and the discovery of the surveillance logs, the central household had zero legal or moral leverage left to fight a prolonged bureaucratic battle. The preservation of the line of succession required absolute structural stability, and William held every single winning card. This final confrontation permanently broke the central household's administrative campaign. Camilla realized that her long-term plan to centralize the royal budgets and control the future distribution of the crown's assets had been completely dismantled by the voice of the woman she had spent decades trying to replace. She put down her glass, walked past William without making eye contact, and exited the oak room through the private apartment's door. The hidden blueprint left behind by Princess Diana inside the locked palace vault had served its ultimate purpose, ensuring that the true line of succession remained entirely unassailable. William picked up the purple-sealed folder, locked it back inside his briefcase, and nodded politely to his father before walking out onto the castle quadrangle. He had successfully cleared his mother's name, purged the compromised administrators from the governance board, and built an impenetrable wall around his future reign. As his private helicopter lifted off into the gray Berkshire skies, heading back toward Kensington Palace, William looked down at the ancient stone towers below. The 30-year-old palace cover-up had completely collapsed, and the ultimate legacy of the Princess of Wales had finally been secured by the son who had sworn to protect it. The extraordinary discovery of Princess Diana's hidden documents has permanently rewritten the internal power balance of the British monarchy. By uncovering these long-buried constitutional files deep inside the vaults of St. James's Palace, Prince William has successfully executed a massive administrative cleanup, neutralizing Queen Camilla's ambitions and proving that his mother's strategic foresight still shapes the destiny of the House of Windsor today. This high-stakes victory confirms that the future king holds absolute, unchecked control over his institutional inheritance, leaving the central household completely outmaneuvered.